The helicopter tilted violently as Chidinma Okafor pressed her face against the cold glass, watching Lagos sprawl beneath her like a glittering maze of broken promises. Her husband's hand gripped her wrist so tightly she felt her bones grinding together. "Get out," Tobechukwu hissed, his face twisted with rage she'd never seen before. "Tob, please, we're 1,000 feet up." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. The other passengers, his business partners and their perfectly groomed wives, stared with a mixture of horror and poorly concealed satisfaction. "You think I care?" He yanked her toward the door, and the pilot shouted something she couldn't hear over the roar of the blades. "You lied to me. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone who matters." Just 3 hours earlier, they'd been celebrating at the Ikoyi Hotel's Grand Ballroom. Tobechukwu had just closed a $50 million real estate deal with Chinese investors, and the champagne flowed like Victoria Island traffic, endless and intoxicating. Chidinma had worn her best Ankara dress, the emerald green one that matched her husband's agbada, and smiled until her cheeks ached. Then Addis Nomani walked in. Chidinma had recognized her former neighbor immediately, the sharp cheekbones, the calculating eyes, the way she moved through a crowd like a shark through water. Addis had lived 3 compounds down from Chidinma's father's house in Ajegunle, back when Chidinma was still Chidinma Isaac, daughter of a drunk who sold used tires by the roadside. "Mrs. Okafor." Addis' voice had cut through the music like broken glass. "Or should I call you Chidinma Isaac from Boundary Road? The girl whose father used to beg my mother for Gary?" The ballroom had gone silent. Even the DJ stopped mid-track. Tobechukwu had turned to Chidinma, his champagne glass suspended halfway to his lips. "What is she talking about?" Chidinma's mouth had opened, but no words came. Her carefully constructed world, the story of being the daughter of a successful import-export businessman who died in a car accident, the fiction of attending Queen's College, the lie about her father's multi-million-dollar properties that she claimed to have inherited and sold, all of it crumbled like wet newspaper. Her father. Addis had laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the crystal chandeliers. Papa Isaac was so poor he couldn't afford school fees for her. We used to see Chidinma hawking pure water in traffic when she was supposed to be in secondary school. Multi-million-dollar properties. The only property that man owned was a one-room apartment with a leaking roof. The whispers had started immediately, spreading through the crowd like wildfire through Harmattan grass. Tobechukwu's business partners had exchanged glances. His mother, who had never fully accepted Chidinma, had smiled with vindication. His sister, Ngozi, had actually gasped with delight. Now, suspended between sky and earth in a helicopter that cost more than her entire childhood, Chidinma felt the full weight of her deception crushing her chest. "I can explain," she stuttered, but Tobechukwu's eyes were dead. "You told me your father left you properties worth millions. You said you sold them to invest in my business. I introduced you to everyone as the daughter of Chief Isaac." His voice broke. "My colleagues are laughing at me. Do you know what this does to my reputation? I did it because I loved you." Chidinma sobbed. "I knew you wouldn't marry a poor girl from Ajegunle. I just wanted a chance. A chance built on lies." He released her wrist suddenly, and she stumbled backward. The helicopter had landed on a private helipad in Lekki, but to Chidinma, it felt like the edge of the world. "Get out of my sight. Get out of my house. Get out of my life." "Tob, where will I go?" "Back to Ajegunle. Back to where you belong." He pulled out his phone, not even looking at her anymore. "Ibrahim, bring Mrs. Okafor's things to the gate. All of them. She's leaving tonight." The other passengers filed past her, their designer perfumes mixing with the helicopter fuel in the air. One of the wives, Yoton Adibeo, paused beside her. "You should have known better than to reach beyond your station," she whispered. "Girls like you never belong in places like this." Chidinma stood alone on the helipad as the helicopter lifted off again, carrying her husband back to the party, back to his life, back to a world where she no longer existed. Her phone buzzed, her mother-in-law's number. She didn't answer. It buzzed again. And again. 20 missed calls in 5 minutes. The security guard approached her awkwardly. "Madam, you need to leave the premises." She nodded numbly, walking toward the exit in her expensive heels that suddenly felt like shackles. Her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "By tomorrow morning, everyone in Lagos will know who you really are. Sleep well, Mrs. Okafor. If you still are one." As she stepped onto the street, the Lagos night swallowing her whole, Chidinma realized that the fall from the helicopter had been just the beginning. The real crash was yet to come. But what she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Papa Isaac's death had left behind more than just poverty and shame. Hidden in a safety deposit box in a forgotten bank, there was a document that would change everything. If only she could find it before Tobechukwu's family destroyed her completely. What would you do if your past was exposed in front of everyone? Hit like if you've ever been judged unfairly, and comment where you're watching from. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The compound gate slammed shut behind Chidinma with the finality of a coffin closing. She stood on Bodiland Road in Ikoyi, surrounded by her belongings scattered across the pavement like the remnants of a shipwreck. Designer bags, shoes still in boxes, her wedding photo in a shattered frame, everything that had once represented her new life now mocked her from the gutter. It was 2 a.m. The security guards had dumped her things without ceremony, following Tobechukwu's orders to the letter. One of them had even spat near her feet before retreating behind the massive iron gates. She could hear them laughing inside. Chidinma's fingers trembled as she tried calling her best friend, Amara. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. A text message appeared. "Sorry, Tobechukwu called everyone. Said you're a fraudster. I can't be associated with this. Please understand." Understand. Chidinma wanted to scream. These were people she'd hosted in her home, women she'd bought gifts for, friends she'd defended when their own scandals erupted. Now, when she needed them most, they'd vanished like morning mist. She scrolled through her contacts, each call met with either silence or rejection. Her phone buzzed with a new message, this time from Ngozi, her sister-in-law. "You're trending on Instagram. #LagosLiar #Fakeres. Congratulations, you're famous for all the wrong reasons." With shaking hands, Chidinma opened Instagram. Her stomach lurched. Someone had created a hashtag dedicated to her disgrace. There were photos from the party, videos of Adi's revelation, memes comparing her to a Nollywood scam artist. The comments were vicious. "She belongs in Kirikiri prison. This is why you verify before you marry. Men, be careful. Ajegunle girl trying to play big girl. God will punish her." Over 50,000 people had shared the post in just hours. Her face was everywhere, twisted in shame, frozen in the moment her lies unraveled. A taxi slowed beside her. The driver's eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, you be that woman from Instagram. The fake heiress." He laughed cruelly and drove off, leaving her choking on exhaust fumes. Chidinma sank onto her suitcase, her body shaking with sobs. Where could she go? Her mother had died 2 years ago. She had no siblings. Her father's family had disowned him for marrying a poor woman, and they'd never acknowledged Chidinma's existence. Her father. Papa Isaac. The drunk, the failure, the man whose memory was being used as a weapon against her. But he hadn't always been that way. Chidinma closed her eyes, remembering fragments, her father teaching her to read by candlelight when NEPA took the electricity, him splitting his last piece of bread with her, his rough hands wiping her tears when bullies mocked her threadbare uniform. "Education is your key, Chidinma," he'd whispered during one of his rare sober moments. "No matter what anyone says about us, get your education. I've prepared something for you. When the time is right, you'll understand." She dismissed it as drunk talk. Papa Isaac had died alone in a rented room in Ajegunle 6 years ago, owing rent, owing debts, owning nothing. Or so she thought. A memory stirred, her father's friend, Uncle Emeka, pulling her aside at the funeral. Your father left something for you at Union Bank, Broad Street branch. He made me promise to tell you when you turned 25, but I lost your contact. Chidinma had turned 25 3 years ago. She'd been so busy crafting her new identity, so consumed with becoming Mrs. Tobechukwu Okafor, that she'd forgotten all about Uncle Emeka's cryptic message. Her phone died, the screen going black like her prospects. She gathered what she could carry, one suitcase, her handbag, and left the rest on the street for scavengers. The walk to Ajegunle would take hours, but she had nowhere else to go. As dawn broke over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that contrasted sharply with her darkness, Chidinma trudged through neighborhoods that marked her descent, from Ikoyi to Oberland, from Six to Lagos Island, from respectability to survival. By the time she reached Boundary Road, her feet were bleeding through her designer heels. The compound looked smaller than she remembered, more decrepit. The neighbors stared as she limped past, recognition dawning on their faces. Chidinma. Papa Isaac's daughter. An old woman selling akara by the roadside squinted at her. We heard you married a big man. Why are you looking like this? Chidinma couldn't answer. She pushed through the crowd gathering around her, their whispers following like flies. Her father's old room had been rented out, but the landlord's wife, Mama Tond, took pity on her and offered a corner in the corridor to sleep. Just for tonight, the woman said firmly. Tomorrow you find somewhere else. As Chidinma lay on a thin mat that smelled of mildew and regret, she thought about Uncle Emeka's words. Union Bank, Broad Street. Tomorrow, she would go there. It was probably nothing, maybe a few thousand naira her father had saved, maybe just papers. But it was the only thread of hope she had left. Her last thought before exhaustion claimed her was of Tobechukwu's face when he told her to leave. Not anger, that she could have fought. But contempt. The look you give something worthless that's wasted your time. She would prove him wrong. Somehow, she would rise from this. She had to. Because the alternative, staying broken in Ajegunle, becoming another cautionary tale that mothers told their daughters, was a fate worse than death. What do you think she'll find at the bank? Comment below. The Union Bank branch on Broad Street stood like a colonial monument to old money and older secrets. Chidinma had borrowed 500 naira from Mama Ton for transport, promising to repay it soon, a word that felt increasingly meaningless in her vocabulary of broken promises. She'd worn the simplest clothes she owned, a faded encore top and jeans, but still felt exposed as she walked through the bank's glass doors. The air conditioning hit her like a reminder of everything she'd lost. Other customers glanced at her, and she wondered if they recognized her from the viral post. The shame made her skin crawl. I need to access a safety deposit box, she told the customer service officer, a young woman with perfect makeup and a name tag that read Blessing. Do you have the key and documentation? No. My father, Ezekiel Isaac, opened it. He died 6 years ago. I was told he left something for me. Blessing's polite smile faltered. Without proper documentation, I can't help you. You'll need a death certificate, proof of kinship, and the original deposit paperwork. Chidinma's chest tightened. I have his death certificate at home in Ajegunle. The paperwork. I don't know where it is. Then you need to petition the bank manager. But I must warn you, these things take time. Months, even years. Tears burned behind Chidinma's eyes. She didn't have months. She didn't even have days. Please. It's all I have left of him. Something in Blessing's expression shifted, perhaps she saw the desperation, perhaps she recognized the face from social media and felt unexpected sympathy. Wait here, she said quietly. Let me check our old records. 20 minutes passed like hours. Chidinma watched wealthy customers come and go, conducting transactions that would feed a family in Ajegunle for years. A woman in an MS scarf complained loudly about interest rates. A man in an agbada backed orders at his secretary over the phone. None of them looked at her. She was invisible again, just like in her childhood. Mrs. Okafor. Chidinma flinched at the name. An elderly man in a suit approached, silver-haired, dignified, with eyes that seemed to see through pretense. "I'm Mr. Okonkwo, the bank manager. Blessing told me about your situation. I actually remember your father." "You do?" "He was unusual." Mr. Okonkwo gestured toward his office. "Please, let's talk privately." Inside the office, surrounded by certificates and photos of the manager with various dignitaries, Chidinma felt even smaller. Mr. Okonkwo settled behind his desk, studying her with an unreadable expression. "Your father came to this bank in 2018, a few months before he died. He was sick, I could see that. But his mind was clear. He insisted on opening a safety deposit box and left explicit instructions that it should only be opened by his daughter, Chidinma Isaac, after her 25th birthday. What's in it? I don't know. Bank policy prevents us from examining the contents. But your father paid for 25 years of storage in advance. He gave me this." Mr. Okonkwo pulled out a sealed envelope from a drawer. "He said to give it to you when you came." Chidinma's hands shook as she took the envelope. Her father's handwriting on the front, "For my daughter, my only treasure." She tore it open. Inside was a letter and a small brass key. "My dear Chidinma, if you're reading this, I am gone, and you have become a woman. I pray you have not inherited my weakness for drink and despair. I pray you have become everything I failed to be. You think I left you nothing but shame. You think I was nothing but a drunk who wasted his life. You are partly right. But you are also wrong. Before I lost myself, I was a land surveyor. In 1987, the military government compensated me for mapping the new Lekki Peninsula. They gave me documents for 3 plots of land instead of cash, land I was too proud and too foolish to claim at the time. I was young, angry at the government, and I wanted money, not paper promises. Years later, when I sobered up enough to remember, I tried to claim the land. But by then, Lekki had transformed. My plots were now worth millions, perhaps tens of millions. The government officials I dealt with wanted bribes I couldn't afford. They blocked me at every turn, waiting for me to die so they could seize the land. I never told you because I didn't want them to come after you. But I documented everything: surveys, approvals, compensation letters, witnesses. It's all in the safety deposit box. The land is yours, Chidinma. The 3 plots on Admiralty Way, now surrounded by banks and hotels. Don't let them steal what's yours. Fight for it. Be stronger than I was. Your father. Papa Isaac." Chidinma's vision blurred. Admiralty Way, Lekki Phase 1. Some of the most valuable real estate in Lagos. If this was true. Is this possible? She whispered to Mr. Okonkwo. Land records from that era are complicated, he said carefully. But if your father has documentation, you might have a case. However, you'll need lawyers. Good ones. And they don't come cheap. I have nothing. Then you need to be very clever. Mr. Okonkwo stood, opening a secure cabinet. He returned with a metal box, setting it on the desk. Use your key. The key fit perfectly. Inside the box were yellow documents, photographs, letters with government seals, and a survey map marked with her father's signature. There were also names, witnesses, officials, surveyors who'd worked with him. And there, at the bottom, was a business card that made Chidinma's blood run cold: Tobechukwu Okafor, Real Estate Development. Her husband's card, but dated 2017. This can't be right, she breathed. Tobe didn't know my father. He couldn't have. Mr. Okonkwo's expression darkened. Are you sure about that? Chidinma's mind raced. Tobechukwu specialized in Lekki real estate. He had business partners in the Lagos State Ministry of Lands. He'd been so insistent about knowing every detail of her inheritance, so angry when he discovered it didn't exist. What if he'd known all along? What if her father's land, her land, was the real reason Tobechukwu had pursued her? Mrs. Okafor, I suggest you move very carefully from here. If what I'm thinking is correct, you've stumbled into something dangerous. Before Chidinma could respond, her phone, which she charged at moments, buzzed with a call. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Chidinma is Ike. The voice was smooth, educated, threatening. Or should I say Mrs. Okafor? We know you went to Union Bank today. We know what you found. If you're smart, you'll forget about those documents. Sell them to us for 10 million naira and disappear. If you're foolish enough to fight, you'll end up like your father, dead in a rented room with nothing to show for your life. The line went dead. Chidinma's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Okonkwo's face had gone pale. They are watching you. Who are they? People who've built empires on land they don't legally own. People who make problems disappear. He handed her the metal box. Take these documents and hide them somewhere safe. Don't trust anyone. And whatever you do, don't go home tonight. As Chidinma stumbled out of the bank, clutching the box like a lifeline, she realized her nightmare had only deepened. She thought her husband had thrown her away because she was a poor girl who'd lied about her status. But what if the truth was far worse? What if Tobechukwu had married her specifically to get control of her father's land? What if her entire marriage had been a calculated fraud? And now, with the documents in her possession, she wasn't just disgraced, she was a target. Chidinma sat in the corner of a busy booker in Yoba, the metal box hidden in her lap beneath the table. The smell of jollof rice and fried chicken surrounded her, but her stomach churned with fear. Every person who walked past the open restaurant felt like a threat. Every motorcycle that stopped nearby made her heart race. She couldn't go back to Ajegunle. If they knew she'd been to the bank, they knew where she'd slept last night. Mometon could be in danger just from housing her. She needed help, but everyone she'd once called friend had abandoned her. Almost everyone. There was one person, someone from her old life, before Tobechukwu, before the lies. Motivational, her classmate from the adult evening school where Chidinma had secretly earned her GC while pretending to work late at the boutique. Chidinma had become a paralegal at a small law firm in Soralia. Chidinma's phone had 12% battery. She dialed quickly. Chidinma's voice was cautious. I saw what happened. Are you okay? No. Chidinma's voice cracked. Chidinma, I need help. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm in danger. There was a pause. Where are you? 20 minutes later, Chidinma arrived at the booker in her office clothes, her face creased with worry. She'd always been plain, sensible, loyal, everything Chidinma had stopped valuing when she'd climbed into Tobechukwu's world. Now, her familiar face was the most beautiful thing Chidinma had seen in days. They moved to a more secluded spot, and Chidinma explained everything. The helicopter. The exposure. The bank. The land. The threat. With each revelation, Chidinma's eyes grew wider. Jesus Christ, this is bigger than I thought. Chidinma examined the documents carefully. These look legitimate. If your father really was compensated with these plots, and if the paperwork is in order, you could be sitting on 200 million naira, maybe more. But the voice on the phone was trying to scare you into selling cheap. Classic intimidation. Chisholm's jaw tightened. My boss handles land disputes. He's tough, old school, doesn't back down. But legal fees for something like this, we are talking millions. I have nothing. We could work on contingency, take a percentage if we win. But first, we need to verify these documents and figure out who's been using your land. Chisholm paused. Are you absolutely sure your husband didn't know about this? The question Chidinma had been avoiding. His business card was in the box. Dated 2017. We met in 2018. Where did you meet him? At a charity event. I was working as a hostess for the catering company. The memory felt contaminated now. He pursued me. It felt like a fairy tale. He said I was different from other women, that he saw something special in me. And when did he start asking about your family? Chidinma's blood turned cold. The second date. He wanted to know everything about my father, where I grew up, what my father did for a living. I thought he was just interested. So I created the story about Chief Isaac and the properties. I thought it would make me more acceptable to him. Oh, Chisholm's voice was soft with pity. He didn't fall for your lies. He planted them. Think about it, he probably knew your father had land claims. He researched you, found out you were Papa Isaac's daughter, and created a relationship to gain access to your inheritance. When you lied about properties that didn't exist, he didn't correct you because he knew about the land you didn't know you had. The weight of it crushed Chidinma's chest. My whole marriage was a lie. Worse than that. I think he was waiting for your father's claims to surface. Maybe he planned to help you discover them, be the hero, and then ensure the land ended up in his name. When Adiz exposed you at the party, it gave him the perfect excuse to throw you out before you could make any legal claims as his wife. Chidinma's hands balled into fists. The humiliation, the public disgrace, her belongings scattered on the street, all of it orchestrated. Not because she'd lied, but because she'd become inconvenient. We need to move fast, Chisholm said. If Tobechukwu knows you have these documents, he'll try to invalidate them or have you declared mentally unfit or worse. We need to file a claim immediately and get a court order protecting the land. What about the threats? We report them to the police, though they are probably useless. But we create a record. And you need to disappear for a few days while we prepare. Stay somewhere he can't find you. I have nowhere. You can stay with me. My flat is small, but it's safe. Chisholm's hand covered Chidinma's. You're not alone in this. Not anymore. For the first time in days, Chidinma felt a flicker of something other than despair. Why are you helping me? I abandoned you when I got married. I didn't invite you to my wedding. I acted like you weren't good enough. Because everyone deserves a second chance. And because that bastard needs to pay for what he's done. Chisholm's eyes flashed with righteous anger. Besides, you helped me pass mathematics. I never forgot that. They left the buka as darkness fell over Lagos, the city's millions of lights flickering on like stars fallen to earth. In Chisholm's one-bedroom flat in Suralere, surrounded by law books and the smell of vegetable soup, Chidinma finally felt safe enough to breathe. But at midnight, her phone buzzed. A message from Tobechukwu. I know you have the documents. You think you're clever. I'm filing an annulment tomorrow, claiming fraud in our marriage. When the court side with me, and they will, anything you claim during our marriage becomes invalid, including land rights discovered while you were legally my wife. You've already lost, Chidinma. Stop embarrassing yourself. Below the message was a photo, Tobechukwu with a beautiful woman in a restaurant, her hand possessively on his arm. The caption, moving on to better things. Chidinma recognized her. Funka Adeniga, daughter of a Lagos state senator, a woman from the right background. This was who Tobechukwu had really wanted all along. Chisholm, Chidinma said quietly. If he files for annulment claiming fraud, can he really invalidate my land claim? Chisholm looked up from her laptop, her face grim. It's complicated. He might argue that any assets discovered during the marriage should be jointly evaluated, creating enough legal confusion to delay your claim for years. And in that time, he could bribe officials to transfer the land illegally or develop it and tie you up in lawsuits you can't afford. So what do? We beat him to it. Tomorrow morning, we file your claim and a countersuit against him for fraud, emotional distress, and attempted theft. We expose everything: his research on your family, his calculated pursuit, his business connections to the Ministry of Lands. We make him the villain. He's rich, connected, respected. I'm the fake heiress from Ajegunle. Who will believe me? Everyone loves a redemption story, and everyone hates a man who preys on vulnerable women. Chisholm smiled grimly. We are going to war. And this time, you're not fighting alone. As Chidinma lay on Chisholm's small couch that night, listening to Lagos's endless symphony of generators and honking horns, she made a decision. She would stop running. Stop hiding. Stop being ashamed. Her father, for all his failures, had tried to leave her something valuable. And she would honor his memory by fighting for it, not just for the money, but for the truth. But she didn't know that Tobechukwu's web of corruption ran deeper than she'd imagined, that powerful people had already profited from her father's land, and that exposing them would put her life in genuine danger. The real war was about to begin. Comment your thoughts on her redemption below. What do you think happens next? The Lagos High Court in Igbosia stood like a temple of justice, its colonial architecture imposing against the morning sky. Chidinma climbed the worn steps beside Chisholm and her boss, Barrister Tobechukwu, a silver-haired man who'd spent 40 years fighting land disputes in Lagos. Remember, Barrister Mbik said, his voice gravelly from years of courtroom battles, no matter what they say, stay calm. They want you to react emotionally. Don't give them ammunition. Chidinma nodded, though her heart hammered against her ribs. In her hands were copies of her father's documents, certified by the bank, notarized by a commissioner for oaths. Chisholm had worked through the night preparing their filing. They'd beaten Tobechukwu's annulment by exactly 3 hours. Inside the courthouse, the corridors teemed with lawyers in black robes, litigants arguing over land boundaries, family members disputing inheritances. The smell of old paper and desperate hope hung in the air. Then she saw him. Tobechukwu stood near Courtroom 7 in an immaculate navy suit, surrounded by a team of lawyers that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Beside him stood Funk Adenuga in designer everything, her arm looped through his possessively. And next to them, Chidinma's stomach dropped, was Commissioner Adekunle Balogun from the Lagos State Ministry of Lands, a man whose signature appeared on dozens of questionable land transfers. They'd brought the government. Chidinma. Tobechukwu's voice dripped with false sympathy. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Drop your claim, take the 10 million, and walk away. You're embarrassing yourself. The only embarrassment, Barrister Mbik said coldly, is a man who married a woman to steal her inheritance. We'll see you in court. Tobechukwu's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of real anger in his eyes. You have no idea what you're up against, old man. Actually, I do. I've been fighting men like you since before you were born. Inside the courtroom, Justice Ajegunle presided, a woman in her 60s with still grey hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. She reviewed the emergency filings with an inscrutable expression. Let me understand, Justice Ajegunle said. Mr. Okafor, you're filing for annulment based on fraud in marriage. And Mrs. Okafor, you're filing a land claim based on your late father's compensation documents while simultaneously accusing your husband of marital fraud. Have I got that right? Yes, Your Honor, both lawyers said simultaneously. This is going to be interesting. Justice Ajegunle's lips twitched. Mrs. Okafor, approach the bench with your documentation. Chidinma's legs felt like water as she moved forward. She handed over the documents with trembling hands. The judge examined them methodically, her eyes sharpening as she read. These appear to be legitimate 1987 compensation certificates from the military administration, Justice Ajegunle said. Mr. Balogun, as the Ministry of Lands representative, do your records show these plots as claimed or transferred? Commissioner Balogun shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, our records from that era are incomplete. Many documents were lost during various office relocations. How convenient. The judge's voice could have frozen water. And yet you've been issuing certificates of occupancy for that area for decades. On what basis, if your records are incomplete? Your Honor, we relied on current occupation and development. In other words, you gave land to whoever could pay the most, regardless of original legal ownership. Justice Ajegunle set the documents down with a sharp snap. Mrs. Okafor, can you prove your father attempted to claim these plots during his lifetime? Barrister Mythic stood. Your Honor, we have witness testimonies from 3 former government surveyors who remember Ezekiel Isaac's attempts to claim his compensation. We also have correspondence from 1995 to 2003 showing Mr. Isaac's repeated petitions to various government offices, all stonewalled by demands for bribes he couldn't afford. Your Honor, Tobechukwu's lead counsel interrupted. A sharp-faced man named Adewale followed. My client's annulment petition supersedes any land claims made during the marriage. Mrs. Okafor deceived him about her background, making their marriage contract fraudulent. Any claims she makes are completely independent of her marital status. Justice Ajegunle cut him off. Her father's land compensation predates her marriage by 30 years. Her right to inherit doesn't depend on who she married. Nice try, counselor. Chidinma felt a surge of hope. But it died quickly. However, Justice Ajegunle continued, this case is complex enough to require a full trial. We need to verify the documents, hear witnesses, investigate current occupation of the land, and yes, address the annulment petition. I'm scheduling a full hearing for 6 weeks from today. In the meantime, I'm issuing a temporary injunction, no development, sale, or transfer of the 3 plots in question on Admiralty Way until this matter is resolved. Your Honor. Commissioner Balogun stood abruptly. That will affect multiple existing developments. We have hotels, banks. Then they should have ensured proper title verification before building. Justice Ajegunle's gaze was withering. If Mrs. Okafor's claim is valid, those developers will need to negotiate with the rightful owner. This court will not protect illegal occupation of land, regardless of how much money has been invested in bad faith. Injunction granted. Next case. The gavel fell like thunder. Outside the courthouse, Tobechukwu cornered Chidinma near the parking lot, his lawyers forming a barrier around them. Funk watched from inside his Range Rover, her expression smug. You think you've won something? Tobechukwu's voice was low, dangerous. That injunction affects the Meridian Hotel development, a $50 million project with Chinese investors. Do you know what happens to people who cost powerful men that kind of money? Are you threatening me? Chidinma found her voice, surprised by its steadiness. I'm warning you. Drop this, take whatever settlement we offer, and disappear. Because if you push this, you won't just lose, you'll be destroyed. Your name, your reputation, your life. I'll make sure you're unhireable, unrentable, unwelcome everywhere in Lagos. You'll wish you'd stayed in that helicopter. Mr. Okafor, Barrister Mythic intervened, everything you just said constitutes witness intimidation. Please continue. I'm recording. Tobechukwu's eyes narrowed dangerously, but he stepped back. 6 weeks, Chidinma. That's all you have before reality crushes whatever delusional hope you're clinging to. Enjoy your temporary victory. He walked away, Funk linking her arm through his as photographers captured them, the perfect couple, unbothered by his ex-wife's desperate claims. Are you okay? Chisholm asked as they watched Tobechukwu's convoy pull away. I don't know. Chidinma's hands shook. Did we really just win something? A battle, Barrister Mbik said. The war is far from over. That injunction will make you serious enemies. Everyone who's profited from those plots illegally will now see you as a threat. We need to prepare for their counterattack. He was right. Within hours, the attacks began. Blog posts appeared online. Fake heiress now claims dead father's land. Expert says she has no case. Anonymous social media accounts spread rumors. Chidinma was mentally ill, a drug addict, a prostitute who trapped Tobechukwu with pregnancy. There was no pregnancy. She'd never even been able to conceive during their marriage. A private pain now weaponized publicly. By evening, someone had leaked her phone number. The calls and messages were relentless. You're going to die for this. Ajegunle trying to steal from her betters. Your father was a drunk who died in shame. Join him. Chisholm had to disconnect Chidinma's phone entirely. They moved to a different safe house, Barrister Mbik's sister's flat in Gogoda, and began preparing for trial in earnest. The three witness surveyors agreed to testify: Mr. Adebayo, retired, Mr. Okonjo, dying of diabetes but determined to see justice, and Mrs. Olodil, who'd kept meticulous personal records of all the cases she'd worked. Each had remembered Ezekiel Isaac and his future quest for his rightful compensation. Your father was a good man who got broken by a corrupt system, Mr. Olodil told Chidinma during their interview. He came to my office in 1998, documents in hand, hope in his eyes. I tried to help him, but my superiors blocked every attempt. They wanted him to pay 5 million naira in processing fees. He didn't have it. So they waited for him to die. Did they know he had a daughter? They probably assumed you'd never find out, or that you'd be too intimidated to fight. They underestimated you. Mrs. Olodil smiled. Your father would be proud. Chidinma wasn't sure about that. She'd spent years ashamed of Papa Isaac, trying to erase him from her story. Now he was her only salvation, his forgotten fight becoming hers. One night, unable to sleep, Chidinma sat on the balcony of the Gogoda flat watching Lagos's lights sprawl endlessly below. Chisholm joined her with 2 bottles of Martina. Remember when we used to study together? Chisholm said. You were so determined to pass that exam. You'd stay up until 2 a.m. reviewing mathematics because you said education was your way out. I thought marrying Tobe was my way out. Look how that turned out. Maybe this is your real way out. Not through a man, but through your own fight. Chidinma considered this. For years, she defined herself in relation to others: Papa Isaac's daughter, Tobechukwu's wife, the fake heiress. What if she could become something else? Someone who stood on her own. Her phone, a new number Chisholm had arranged, buzzed. A message from an unknown sender. Meet me at the Yellow Chili restaurant in 6 tomorrow, 2 p.m. I have information about your husband's business dealings with the Ministry of Lands. Come alone. A friend. Chidinma showed Chisholm, who frowned. It's obviously a trap. Or it's someone who wants to help but can't be seen publicly. Chi, after everything that's happened, you want to walk into an obvious trap. What choice do I have? If there's evidence that Tobechukwu bribed officials to steal land, it strengthens our case. I have to risk it. Then I'm coming with you. The message says come alone. I'll be nearby. If anything happens, I call the police and Barrister Mbik. Chisholm's expression was firm. You're not doing this without backup. The next day, Chidinma sat in the Yellow Chili at exactly 2 p.m., her heart pounding. The restaurant was busy with the lunch crowd, business people in suits conducting deals over butter chicken and naan. She ordered water and waited. At 2:15, a woman approached, elegant, 50-ish, with the bearing of someone used to power. She sat across from Chidinma without introduction. I'm Mrs. Patience Nwosu. I was married to Tobechukwu's late business partner, Charles Nwosu. I remember the name from the wedding. He died 2 years ago. Suddenly. Conveniently, just after he discovered what Tobechukwu was doing. Mrs. Nwosu's eyes were hard. My husband had copies of documents, bribes paid, land fraudulently acquired, government officials on Tobechukwu's payroll. Charles wanted to expose it all. A week later, he had a heart attack. The autopsy was rushed, the burial quick. Chidinma's blood ran cold. You think Tobechukwu? I can't prove it. But I've been waiting for someone brave enough to challenge him. When I saw your case, I knew it was time. Mrs. Nwosu slid a flash drive across the table. Everything Charles collected. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographs of cash payments to Commissioner Balogun. Use it carefully. These people have killed before. Why are you helping me? Because my husband deserves justice. And because I'm tired of watching powerful men destroy lives without consequence. Mrs. Nwosu stood. Be careful, Mrs. Okafor. You're threatening a very profitable system. They will do everything to stop you. She disappeared into the lunch crowd before Chidinma could say thank you. That night, Barrister Mythic reviewed the flash drive's contents with growing excitement. This is explosive. Proof of systematic corruption, not just your case, but dozens of others. If we present this in court, they'll kill her, Chisholm said flatly. Or us. We need police protection. The police work for people like Balogun, Barrister Mythic countered. We need something better, public attention. If we leak part of this to the press, create enough scrutiny that harming Chidinma becomes more dangerous than letting the trial proceed. Do it, Chidinma said. I'm tired of hiding. The story broke 2 days later, massive land fraud exposed, government officials named in multi-million naira scheme. The Guardian, Punch, and Premium Times all ran versions. Social media exploded. Suddenly, Chidinma wasn't just the fake heiress, she was the whistleblower who'd uncovered systemic corruption. Public opinion began to shift. #Justice for Chidinma trended. Women's groups rallied behind her. Even some of her former friends quietly reached out, apologizing for abandoning her. But with fame came fury. 3 days before the trial, masked men broke into Barrister Mythic's office. They stole nothing, just left a message painted on the wall in red, drop the case or drop dead. And on the morning of the trial, Chidinma received a photo on her phone, Mama Tond, the landlord's wife who'd given her shelter in Ajegunle, tied to a chair, terror in her eyes. The message beneath, come to the abandoned warehouse on Opopo Road at midnight. Alone. Trade yourself for her life. Or watch her die on live stream. The courtroom had never felt so much like a battlefield. Justice Ajegunle's gavel hadn't even fallen yet, but Chidinma could feel the tension crackling through the air like electricity before a Lego storm. Every seat was filled, journalists, activists, government officials, and curious spectators who'd followed the scandal from the beginning. But Chidinma's mind wasn't on the trial. All she could see was Mama Tond's terrified face in that photo. The woman who'd offered her shelter when everyone else had turned away, now paying the price for Chidinma's fight. Chisholm gripped her hand under the table. Focus. We are about to start. They have Mama Tond. I know. We reported it to the police. Barrister Mythic has people searching. But right now, you need to fight this battle. Win here, and you have leverage to save her. Run into their trap, and you both die. The logic was sound, but Chidinma's heart screamed otherwise. All rise, the bailiff called. Justice Ajegunle entered, her expression more severe than usual. Before we begin, I want to address the intimidation tactics that have plagued this case. The break-in at counsel's office, the threats against the plaintiff, and now a kidnapping. Let me be clear, this court will not be bullied. Extra security has been arranged, and I've requested police investigation into all threats. This trial will proceed fairly and without interference. She fixed her gaze on Commissioner Balogun, who sat rigid in his government regalia. Furthermore, given the serious allegations of corruption involving the Ministry of Lands, I've invited representatives from the EFCC and ICPC to observe these proceedings. If evidence of bribery or fraud emerges, it will be referred for criminal prosecution immediately. The anti-corruption agencies. Chidinma saw Tobechukwu's lawyer whisper urgently in his ear. Commissioner Balogun's face had gone ashen. Now, Justice Ajegunle continued, Mrs. Okafor, your counsel may present your case. Barrister Mythic rose, his 40 years of courtroom experience evident in every measured movement. Your Honor, we will demonstrate 3 things today. First, that Ezekiel Isaac was legitimately compensated with 3 plots of land in 1987. Second, that government officials systematically denied his claims for 3 decades. Third, that these same officials fraudulently transferred his land to others, including the plaintiff's now estranged husband, for personal profit. He called Mrs. Oledil first. The elderly surveyor walked to the witness stand with dignity, her testimony precise and damning. She'd kept personal records of every case she'd worked, including Papa Isaac's. She produced letters, meeting notes, even a photograph of herself with Ezekiel at the ministry office in 1998. He was a broken man by then, she testified, her voice carrying clearly. The drink had taken him, yes. But you could see the fight still in his eyes. He knew he'd been cheated, and it destroyed him that he couldn't leave his daughter anything better. Tobechukwu's lawyer tried to discredit her during cross-examination. Mrs. Oledil, how can we trust records you kept privately? Isn't it convenient that you, a stranger to the plaintiff, kept such detailed notes? Young man, Mrs. Oledil's eyes flashed, I kept records on every case because I worked in a corrupt system. I documented everything so that someday, someone might care about justice. I'm 73 years old. I have nothing to gain from lying. The gallery murmured approval. Next came Mr. Okonjo, wheeled into court in a hospital wheelchair, oxygen tank beside him. His testimony was brief but powerful. He'd been the surveyor who originally mapped the Lekki compensation plots in 1987. He recognized Papa Isaac's signature on the documents. The military government was more honest than the civilian ones that followed, he said weakly. They actually compensated people. But later officials saw opportunity. They tell claimants the paperwork was lost, demand bribes, wait for people to die. Then they'd redistribute the land to the highest bidder. Can you name any officials who engaged in this practice? Barrister Mythic asked. Mr. Okonjo's eyes found Commissioner Balogun. That man sitting right there. I watched him do it for 20 years before I retired. He's a thief in government clothing. The courtroom erupted. Justice Ajegunle hammered her gavel for order. Commissioner Balogun stood, sputtering protest, but the damage was done. Then came the flash drive evidence. Barrister Mythic connected a laptop to the courtroom's display system. Your Honor, what you're about to see are financial records obtained by the late Charles Nosu, who was Mr. Okafor's business partner until his sudden death 2 years ago. The screen filled with bank transfers, millions of naira flowing from Tobechukwu's company accounts to offshore accounts linked to Commissioner Balogun and 3 other ministry officials. Dates, amounts, and property addresses matched perfectly with land transfers in Lekki, including the 3 plots that belonged to Papa Isaac. In 2017, Barrister Mythic narrated, Mr. Okafor paid Commissioner Balogun 15 million naira. 1 month later, Plot 42 on Admiralty Way, one of Mrs. Okafor's father's plots, was transferred to a shell company controlled by Mr. Okafor. The same pattern repeats for plots 43 and 44. This is fabricated. Tobechukwu's lawyer shouted. These documents are illegally obtained. They are evidence of criminal activity. Justice Ajegunle cut him off. The manner of obtaining them is irrelevant to their authenticity. Mr. Okafor, can you explain these transfers? Tobechukwu stood, his composure finally cracking. Those were legitimate business transactions. Business transactions for land you didn't own. Land that was already compensated to someone else 30 years prior. The judge's voice was ice. Mr. Okafor, did you know Ezekiel Isaac held legitimate claims to this plot when you married his daughter? Silence. Tobechukwu's jaw walked, but no words came. Let me help you, Barrister Mbik said. We have testimony from a private investigator Mr. Okafor hired in 2017 to research the Isaac family. The same investigator who conveniently discovered that Ezekiel had died but left a daughter, Chidinma. A daughter who didn't know about her father's land claims. He displayed another document, a private investigator's report with Chidinma's photo, her work address, her schedule. Everything Tobechukwu needed to accidentally meet her. You targeted my client, Barrister Mbik's voice rang with righteous anger. You researched her, pursued her, married her, all to gain control of land you knew she would eventually inherit. When she created a false story about her father's wealth to seem worthy of you, you let her believe it because it suited your purposes. And when she became inconvenient, you discarded her publicly and cruelly. Chidinma felt tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of shame anymore. They were tears of vindication, of rage, of grief for the love that had never existed. Your Honor, Tobechukwu's lawyer tried desperately, even if these allegations were true. They are true, a voice called from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Funk Adenuga stood in the doorway, elegant and composed. She walked forward, ignoring Tobechukwu's desperate signals. Miss Adenuga. Justice Ajegunle's eyebrows rose. You wish to testify? Yes, Your Honor. I need to clear my conscience. Funk took the witness stand, her hands trembling slightly. Tobechukwu Okafor courted me in 2016. We were planning to marry. Then suddenly, he broke things off. He told me he'd found a better opportunity, a girl from Ajegunle whose father had died with land claims worth millions. He said once he married her and gained access to the inheritance, he'd divorce her and come back to me. You're lying. Tobechukwu shouted. Funk, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth. Something you've never done. Funk's voice strengthened. You called me 2 months ago, said the plan had hit a snag because Chidinma didn't know about the land. You asked me to pretend to be your new girlfriend to hurt her, to keep her isolated and vulnerable. I agreed because I was angry. But watching what you've put that woman through. She looked at Chidinma. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. None of it. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Journalists rushed to file stories. The EFCC representatives made urgent phone calls. Commissioner Baligan stood to flee, but bailiffs blocked the exits. Justice Ajegunle hammered her gavel repeatedly. Order. Order in this court. When silence finally fell, her voice was granite. I've heard enough. Mr. Okafor, Commissioner Baligan, and the 3 other ministry officials named in these financial records, you are ordered to remain in Lagos pending criminal investigation. Mrs. Chidinma Okafor, I am ruling in your favor. The 3 plots on Admiralty Way legally belong to you as the sole heir of Ezekiel Isaac. All fraudulent transfers are hereby nullified. Any structures built on your land without your consent must be negotiated with you as the rightful owner. Furthermore, I am recommending full criminal prosecution for corruption, fraud, and conspiracy. If anyone has harmed or threatened Mrs. Okafor or her associates, those charges will be added. Mr. Okafor, your annulment petition is denied. Until your divorce is finalized through proper channels, Mrs. Okafor has full marital rights to protection on assets. The gavel fell. Justice had been served. But Chidinma couldn't celebrate. Mama Tan was still missing. As the courtroom emptied, a young police inspector approached Chidinma. Mrs. Okafor. Inspector Amina Yusuf. We've been tracking the kidnapping. We know where they are holding your friend. Where? The warehouse on Opopo Road, exactly where they told you to come. They expected you to play hero and walk into their trap. Instead, you stayed and fought in court. That bought us time to set up a tactical response. She smiled grimly. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't running into danger. It's trusting others to fight alongside you. Within hours, police raided the warehouse. Momaton was rescued, shaken but unharmed. The kidnappers, hired thugs paid by one of Commissioner Balogun's associates, were arrested. In the hospital where Momaton was being treated for dehydration, the old woman gripped Chidinma's hand. You did it, my daughter. You didn't let them win. I almost came for you. I almost abandoned everything. And that's what they wanted. To make you small again. To make you feel like you didn't deserve justice. Momaton's eyes shone. But you stood firm. Your father would be proud. 6 months later, Chidinma stood on plot 42, Admiralty Way, watching construction crews work on her new building, the Ezekiel Isaac Educational Foundation. With the land's value and the settlements from the developers who'd built illegally, she had enough money to fund scholarships for girls from Ajegunle and other poor neighborhoods. Girls who, like her, dreamed of education as their escape. Chisholm stood beside her, now a full partner in Barrister Mbig's firm, which had gained national prominence from the case. You could have sold this land and lived in luxury forever, Chisholm said. I did that already. Luxury built on lies. Chidinma smiled. This is better. This means something. Tobechukwu and Commissioner Balogun were in prison awaiting trial, the corruption scandal having implicated over 50 government officials. The case had sparked a national conversation about land fraud and the abuse of vulnerable people by the powerful. Chidinma's Instagram, once filled with hate, now overflowed with messages of support. Women shared their own stories of being judged, betrayed, or underestimated. She'd become an unexpected icon of resilience. But the best moment came a week later, when Mrs. Olodil visited the construction site. Your father visited my dreams last night, the old surveyor said softly. He was smiling. He said, tell my daughter she didn't just fight for land. She fought for every person who was told they were too poor, too broken, too shameful to deserve justice. Chidinma's eyes filled with tears, good tears this time. I spent so many years being ashamed of him. Trying to erase him from my story. And now I understand. He wasn't perfect, but he tried. He left me something more valuable than land, he left me a reason to fight. To prove that where you come from doesn't determine where you belong. As the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Chidinma Isaac, no longer Okafor, never again defined by a man's name, stood on her father's land and finally felt at peace. She'd been thrown out of a helicopter, disgraced publicly, threatened with death. She'd lost a husband but found herself. She traded a mansion in Ikoyi for a foundation built on truth. And she'd learned that redemption doesn't come from pretending to be someone else. It comes from embracing exactly who you are, scars and all, and fighting for what's right. The helicopter that was supposed to represent her downfall had actually been her liberation. Sometimes you have to fall before you learn to fly on your own. 2 years later, the Ezekiel Isaac Educational Foundation had sent 200 girls to university. Chidinma had remarried, a choir teacher from Ajegunle who'd known her as a child and loved her for exactly who she was. They lived simply, worked hard, and every Sunday, Chidinma visited her father's grave with fresh flowers. She'd forgiven Tobechukwu, not because he deserved it, but because carrying hatred was exhausting. He'd served 3 years of a 10-year sentence and was now trying to rebuild his life, humbled and haunted by his choices. Addis Nomoni, who'd exposed Chidinma at that fateful party, had apologized publicly and privately. I was jealous, she'd admitted. You'd escaped Ajegunle, and I was still stuck. I wanted to pull you back down. I'm sorry. Chidinma had forgiven her too. Because the greatest lesson her journey taught her was this: shame only has power when you let it. The moment you stand in your truth, all of it, the poverty and the pain, the lies and the lessons, shame loses its grip. She was Chidinma Isaac, daughter of a drunk surveyor who never gave up fighting for justice, even when the system crushed him. Survivor of betrayal. Mother to 200 girls who now called her Auntie Chi and believed in possibilities beyond their circumstances. And she was enough. She had always been enough. The helicopter couldn't kill her spirit. Nothing could. Because she'd finally learned to fly. The end. Thank you for watching this journey of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their past doesn't define their future. Comment below, what was your favorite moment in Chidinma's story? And remember, no matter where you're from or what you've been through, you deserve justice, dignity, and love. Until next time, this is Kismat's Mythic Tales, reminding you that every fall can become a flight.